the top of his scores, Felix Mendelssohn Bartholdy would often scribble four letters, L-E-G-G. They stood for God, Let It Succeed. He was a Protestant from a Jewish family and one of the foremost musicians of the 19th century. The Mitteldeutsche Rundfunk Choir and Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Jun Merkel, performed the symphony cantata Hymn of Praise, one of the greatest achievements of 19th century Protestant spiritual music. Felix Mendelssohn Bartholdy was 31 years old when he wrote this symphony. He was already famed throughout Europe as a composer and conductor. He had been in Leipzig for 5 years by then, conducting the Gewandhaus Orchestra, renowned even at the time. It was August 1840 and the city was celebrating the 400th anniversary of the invention of the printing press with the Gutenberg Festival. Leipzig commissioned a work from Mendelssohn Bartholdy for the festival concert in the St. Thomas Church. He wrote a complete symphony with choral passages taken from the Psalms. He called the monumental work simply Lobgesang, Hymn of Praise.
This work is very clearly bracketed by the motif, "Let everything that has breath praise the Lord." We hear that at the very beginning, a few more times along the way, and again at the end. So it's unified both musically and thematically. It's a glorification of God.
Let everything that has breath praise the Lord are the final words of the 150th and final psalm. They can be taken as a quintessence of the Old Testament psalms. The composer makes this passionate, fulsome praise the leitmotif of his work. Musically, it was a new form. Mendelssohn Bartholdy blended elements of the cantata into a symphony.
It's a hybrid that neither musicologists nor the public can quite make sense of. What's it supposed to be? It starts like a symphony and ends like an oratorio. The concept seems to borrow from Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. But that begs the question, after Beethoven's Ninth, is it even possible to carry on writing symphonies? In fact, Mendelssohn developed another approach by trying to depict the relationship to God in the choral sections.
Felix Mendelssohn Bartholdy devoted much of his creative energy to spiritual music, far more than the social conventions of the age would normally have required. Stylistically, his music can be traced back to the transition from classical to romanticist. In a sense, his religious feelings can too, but the Protestant values at their core were absolutely clear: tolerance, self-awareness, and freedom. Felix Mendelssohn was born to an upper-middle-class family on February 3, 1809, and grew up in Berlin. He was the grandson of Moses Mendelssohn, the signature philosopher of the Jewish Enlightenment.
Moses Mendelssohn came from a Jewish ghetto. He was born in Dessau and later came to Berlin as a dirt poor down and out. But he did an incredible job of working his way up in Berlin. And his main work, Phaedon, or The Death of Socrates, became one of the most significant philosophical works of his time.
Moses' son Abraham completed the family's entry into high society. He made his mark as a banker, and soon the Mendelssohns were one of the most influential families in Berlin. They moved into a palatial residence in the city center, and their parlor soon became a focal point for everyone who was anyone in Prussian society. In a bid to complete the family's acceptance into this very Christian world and secure his children's future, Abraham distanced himself from his father's Jewish legacy. He had his children baptized, and 6 years later, he and his wife converted to Christianity.
Abraham Mendelssohn thought he had to assimilate into this society more, so he took all his children and had them convert to the Protestant faith. That was when they added the surname Bartholdy. They were trying to gain greater social acceptance that way, by adopting this faith.
Felix was 7 years old when he was baptized in the new church, known today as the German Cathedral on the Gendarmenmarkt in Berlin. He went on to study music at the renowned Protestant Berlin Singing Academy. Soon he was traveling around Europe, performing for audiences as a child prodigy on the piano. Felix is the Latin word for happy, and it would become a prophetically accurate description of his life right to the end.
He must have been something of a blithe spirit, in the sense that everything he touched was a success. He was a very highly educated man, a very gentle and sensitive man, very cultivated, and he had a fine taste. As a human being, he must have had a wonderful personality. In fact, he was one of the very few personalities who can claim an undisputedly positive image.
The prophet Elijah curses the people of Israel. They have fallen away from the true faith and prayed to the god Baal. Now there will be drought. This scene from the Old Testament became the basis for Felix Mendelssohn's best-known spiritual work, the oratorio Elijah, a highly dramatic sequence of scenes for soloists, choir, and orchestra. It centers upon the prophet, who embodies the principle of monotheism in the biblical narrative. The Mitteldeutsche Rundfunk has recorded the work for a new CD release.
Basically, it asks the questions, who is God? Which God is the real one? And here, Elijah, this extremely troublesome prophet, confronts the rest of the world, which is worshipping and praying to the god Baal and his minions. The oratorio offered a vast wealth of stylistic possibilities to work with. That is, he was able to use elements from all different directions to create a great work of great proportions. Elijah lasts about 2 hours. It's an alternative to the other great compositional form, the opera.
Felix Mendelssohn Bartholdy was a near-compulsive letter writer, so much is known about his thoughts and views. But conspicuously absent are clear statements about his religious feelings. Judaism, Johann Sebastian Bach, Martin Luther, Beethoven, the Prussian bourgeoisie, and the Romanticist philosophy of art all contributed to his worldview. He was ever the good Protestant, but his personal idea of faith was a unique blend of art and religion that lay just outside the church doctrine of any school. At the time, the demand for oratorios in Germany was high. They were composed for the music festivals held in many cities, and they gave the growing numbers of amateur musicians an opportunity to work with professionals and share in the region's cultural life. Elijah was Mendelssohn Bartholdy's second oratorio, after one on the New Testament apostle Paul. It drew upon Jewish traditions to reach new heights of musical and religious drama. In Elijah, the composer interpreted subjects from the Old Testament, the part of the Holy Scriptures common to Jews and Christians. He planned and shaped the oratorio for years, often putting it aside, partly because he was dissatisfied with the selection of psalms for the libretto. Historians and musicologists have long speculated on what attracted Mendelssohn Bartholdy to the story of Elijah. Some believe it was his own family's past that moved him to contemplate his personal religious leanings.
It comes out in the performance history of Elijah, in his search for the right libretto. It's a kind of collage of different texts. His librettist, Julius Schubring, kept trying to push this Elijah towards the Christian doctrine and make it an avowal of New Testament faith. But Mendelssohn Bartholdy kept resisting that.
Und dagegen hat sich Felix Mendelssohn Bartholdy immer gewehrt. Sagte, ich möchte bei diesem
He said he wanted to stick with the Old Testament. He picked out lots of ideas and texts that were very clearly rooted in it.
Ganz klar im Alten Testament blieben. Und so hat dann auf der einen Seite die
So, on the one hand, he sought the proximity to the Protestant church and faith, but on the other hand, he pays homage to his Jewish roots and expressed this in his music.
Hat die bewahrt und sie musikalisch auch umgesetzt.
It took only a nudge from the Prussian king Friedrich Wilhelm IV to bring a different aspect of the composer's personality to the fore. In 1841, he lured Mendelssohn Bartholdy back to Berlin with an appointment as Prussia's general music director. As such, he would write music for the court as well as the liturgy in its church. The king preferred simple a cappella chorals on the Calvinist model. Mendelssohn Bartholdy drew upon historical psalms from the Calvinist Genevan Psalter for his libretto.
Wie eine These psalms by Mendelssohn have an immediate musical force, but it isn't really due to their excellence as compositions. There are works by Mendelssohn of an entirely different caliber, where he uses Martin Luther's text of the Psalms 2 or 98 or 100. They're very grand arrangements, sometimes with 8 voices. But these little Genevan psalms actually live from the intensity of the song and the unifying classical form. This subordinates them to the word and choral melody in a way that gives the music its strength. They're songs for the congregation, and that's what gives them their power. That's what makes these little songs exciting.
Mendelssohn Bartholdy's last residence was in Leipzig. Here, after nearly 2 years of intense work, he completed the oratorio that had been so long in the planning, Elijah. The premiere in Birmingham, England in 1846 was a major triumph.
Of course, the form of the oratorio can be found in Handel's Messiah and the like. That was the form in the Baroque, when the oratorio went through its golden age. And Mendelssohn triggered a renaissance of the oratorio. So for me, Elijah is the most important oratorio of the entire 19th century.
It was also an inspiration for many other composers of the age, every aspect of it, from its conception to the details of its arrangement, or Mendelssohn Bartholdy's ballad-like arias. A prophet is an instrument of God. He fulfills a purpose. Elijah struggles in the cause of the faith. But he is also a religious zealot who causes the priests of Baal to die by the judgment of God. At one of the dramatic climaxes of the composition, God and his rival Baal are called upon to send fire from the heavens.
Propheten Baals, erwähnet einen Farren und legt kein Feuer daran. Und rufet ihr an den Namen eures Gottes, und ich will den Namen des Herrn anrufen. Welcher Gott nun mit Feuer antworten wird, der sei Gott. Welcher Gott nun mit Feuer antworten wird, der sei Gott.
The composer never lived to hear Elijah sung in German. On November the 4th, 1847, only a few days before he was to conduct the German premiere in Leipzig, Felix Mendelssohn Bartholdy died after a series of strokes. Though his life was short, he is said to have lived a fortunate one. Yet he has been ostracized and even reviled for his Jewish origin. This type of defamation only intensified after his death. culminating in a total ban on his works in Germany under the Nazis. He is buried in the Trinity Cemetery in Berlin's Kreuzberg district. He himself chose the lines on his gravestone from a poem by Joseph von Eichendorff. They may well sum up his undogmatic personal approach to both religion and music. Thoughts and songs reach to the realm of heaven. What remains of Felix Mendelssohn Bartholdy today? He is perhaps best known for his symphony cantata, Hymn of Praise. It's based on variations of an old Protestant hymn called Now Thank We All Our God. But Mendelssohn Bartholdy exalts it from a pious choral to an explosion of rejoicing for an entire orchestra. It was sacred music written for a secular occasion, a celebration of the invention of the printing press, an invention seminal to the rebirth of civilization and instrumental in ushering in the Age of Reason. It also made possible the dissemination of the Bible to the general public. Mendelssohn Bartholdy's music was also a tribute to man's ability to contemplate divine truth. This hymn of praise embodies the inner contradiction in a man who praised God, yet glorified the Enlightenment.